A bipartisan panel of CNN commentators banded together to basically defend the Israel lobby, and in particular AIPAC spending, with one panelist even admitting to running ads against Thomas Massie, who of course lost his primary to a highly funded pro-Israel puppet. Yeah, I said that, Ed Galrein. Now the panel kicked off by discussing a Democrat, Maureen Galindo, who ran for a House seat in Texas. And she happened to ignite quite a bit of a firestorm and controversy when she wrote the following, referring to herself in the third person. She'll turn Karnes ICE detention center into a prison for American Zionists and former ICE officers for human trafficking. It will also be a castration processing center for pedophiles, which will probably be most of the Zionists. As you can imagine, that was met with a lot of backlash. Okay, and so Galindo has made other controversial statements as well. She, for instance, told the San Antonio Current, quote, "It's all very complex, but it's my perception that Zionist billionaires run the world. They're of all religions, but especially Israeli, Jewish billionaire Zionists who disproportionately and factually own a lot of Hollywood production studios, media companies, and banks." And there is more. She also wrote the following. On social media, she wrote, "Zios equal genocidal European colonizer freaks." She has elsewhere referred to the synagogue of Satan and said that Israeli leaders are not real Jews. So I give you that context to finally bring us to that CNN panel that I referenced earlier. So let's watch how the conversation kicked off. In fact, let's start with Audie Cornish, who used to be over at NPR, now she's over at CNN, basically conflating Galindo's remarks with Thomas Massie's concession speech.
Now, Galindo denies that her remarks are anti-Semitic. According to the New York Times, Democrats claim Galindo is being supported by a new Republican-connected PAC called Lead Left, which has poured nearly $500,000 into the race this month. Now, talk of Israel also took center stage in the Kentucky Republican primary between Thomas Massie and Ed Galrein. Massie eventually lost to his Trump-endorsed opponent, but it was a loss he partially blamed on the influence of pro-Israel lobbyists who dumped money into the race.
I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Galrein in Tel Aviv.
All right, the group chat is back. I wanted to talk about this because once you see it surfacing bipartisan.
Interesting collection of people on that panel. We're gonna conflate what Massie said there with the statements that I read to you earlier. Are we serious? Okay, so Ed Galrein was heavily funded by the Israel lobby. And the only reason why he was heavily funded by the Israel lobby, to the point where that GOP primary race out of freaking Kentucky for a House seat happened to be the most expensive primary race in American history. Like, why do you think the Israel lobby funded Ed Galrein so heavily in order to defeat Thomas Massie? Well, because Thomas Massie has a problem with funding Israel's wars, having blood on our hands for being complicit in Israel's atrocities in the Middle East. Like, he has spoken out against this. He is a deficit hawk, and it turns out that he's not just a pretend deficit hawk. He actually cares about the fact that the US is drowning in federal debt. He has explained his positions over and over and over again. And so yeah, when he mentions that Ed Galrein is a puppet of the Israeli government because the Israeli lobby propped him up to beat Massie, I have no problem with that. To conflate what Massie said there with Maureen Galindo's statements, I think is a bit much. Let me just leave it there. Now, in the next clip, a panelist by the name of Joel Rubin accuses Massie of trying to attack Jews for political power. Let's just watch what he has to say, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
What Galindo is pushing is deeply anti-Semitic and hateful. And what Massey did right there, he might as well have just said, why didn't I call up my opponent at synagogue and just be very direct about how Jews bought the election against him. This is across the board on both extremes of both parties. The idea that Jews should now be attacked politically to gain power for candidates is becoming mainstream. It's deeply troubling as an American and as an American Jew. I find it to be anti-American and anti-Jewish. I think that the Republicans last week, they kicked out Massey in that primary. Good. Now Democrats, we have a test of our own with Galindo.
You know what I find anti-American? When a foreign country gets to meddle in our elections and decide who represents the people of this country, which is effectively what happens with the Israel lobby, which is well funded, and they will destroy any incumbent who dare, speak out against Israel's actions or the US alliance with Israel, or more importantly, a politician who decides, no, I actually do not want to greenlight more funding to a genocidal regime in the Middle East. So I don't care that you're Jewish, no one mentioned Jews. No one's having a conversation about Jews. We're having a conversation about a foreign country that insists on referring to itself as the Jewish state and insists on conflating the global Jewish population with a genocidal regime in Israel. But smart people don't do that because they don't conflate an entire population of human beings with a single genocidal government that acts with impunity thanks to our government being corrupted by them. I'm just so sick of this. I'm so sick of oh my God, we are such special victims. We're the most powerful people in the country, but we're victims. You're not victims. You're not victims. So don't talk to me about what you find un-American, okay? As American taxpayers are forced to go deeper and deeper and deeper into federal debt in order to fund atrocities that Israel wants to carry out in their border expansion project in the Middle East.
Let me tell you about someone we hired recently. Great on paper, sure, but what really sold me? They were genuinely interested in the role, asked smart questions. You could tell they actually wanted to work here. Their excitement made their resume stand out from all the others. If you're hiring, you want a candidate who's passionate about your role. But you can't get that insight from just a resume unless you post your job on ZipRecruiter. Now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/TYT. ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology finds qualified candidates quickly, and ZipRecruiter has a new feature that shows you the most interested, qualified candidates first, so you meet the right people faster. Candidates can tell you in their own words why they're interested in your job. No wonder ZipRecruiter's the #1 rated hiring site. Find candidates who really want your job on ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/TYT. That's ziprecruiter.com/TYT. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
So we should also note that Galindo did in fact lose her primary last night. Doing these comparisons of Galindo and Massey, it's just what a ridiculous conversation. But her comments were widely criticized by conservatives, liberals, progressives. Everybody criticized her comments, everybody. Okay, in this country that's dripping with anti-Semitism and oh my God, Jewish people are the biggest victims in the world. Every single political faction in this country condemned her. But we're still having conversations about it as if we have a real big problem because one candidate said things that made people offended, that offended people. So that aside, let's actually watch more from this panel because it was enlightening. It's enlightening because we're not talking about a panel full of right-wing, Israel firsters. This is a panel of Democrats, right? The person we just heard from worked for the Obama administration. So here's a stunning moment in which the panelists actually admit that pro-Israel spending is out of control. It's going through the roof. Let's take a look.
So, yeah, no, it's something I've reported on, and it is there's millions of dollars that are coming in on this. But there are some millions of dollars that are with Latino-backed PACs or
also
Black
crypto and AI,
crypto and all that. But the association that happens here over this over Jewish money and how it connects to all this is very clearly coming across.
The PAC money we're talking about, by the way, and I've done work with AIPAC before, the PAC money is from regular American citizens, and some are Jewish, some are Christian, and believe in the U.S.-Israel relations.
I think there's some debate when it comes to PAC money, because we don't always know what is happening with PAC money. But I even brought up Massey earlier, because there was also a Republican Jewish coalition that spent money there.
From individuals. They collected their money from individual American citizens. I mean,
but why shouldn't they, right? Like, why shouldn't they oppose candidates who oppose their agenda? Why? And look, I've never been an AIPAC backer. I'll say when I've engaged in politics, I've stayed out of that lane. But I'm very offended as a Jewish American to see AIPAC attacked because they are supporting or opposing a candidate.
I do have a problem with the AIPAC money. Now, let me be clear. I have a problem with all of the money in politics. I have a problem with the pharmaceutical industry buying our politicians. I have a problem with the oil and gas industry buying our politicians. But there's an extra level of ickiness when foreign countries get to influence our foreign policy to the point where we fund Israel's wars. We give them the highest amount of foreign aid compared to any other country, relative to any other country that gets foreign aid from the United States. They start wars or engage in wars. We bankroll it. I don't know why. Why do we bankroll it? But we do it every time. We have spent $30 billion on Israel, by the way, on top of the usual $4 billion we give them every year, in order to fund their war since October 7th, 2023. So yeah, I have a huge problem with it, because here's the thing. Even if, let's say there's a full-blown investigation into who funds the Israel lobby, and we find out every single person is a US citizen. I'm sure there's a lot of dual citizens in there as well. I don't care. I don't care, because at the end of the day, these are individuals who are bribing our politicians, buying our politicians to do what's right for Israel, not the United States. And I know this is shocking and hard for some people to hear, okay? So brace yourselves. Sometimes, in fact, a lot of the time, Israel's interests are not the same as America's interests. Isn't that crazy? So yeah, I have a huge problem when, whether they're American citizens who care more about Israel and doing what's best for Israel, when they buy our politicians and our politicians carry out policies, foreign policy in particular, at the detriment of the American people. I have a problem with that, right? It undermines our democratic process. And on top of that, it does so in a way that carries out policies that are beneficial to a foreign country and its people, as opposed to the American people. Okay, I don't think it's that difficult to understand this, and I'm pretty sure all of the people on that panel do know this, they do understand it, but they engage in these fake conversations and debates anyway, as if they don't understand it. As if everyone who's raising these concerns is just a full-blown anti-Semite who hates Jews. Has nothing to do with Jews, it has something to do with a foreign country. That foreign country, not our country. Not our country. I don't care if it's a country full of Muslims. I don't care if it's a country full of Jews. I don't care if it's a country full of atheists. I don't care. It's a foreign country. That's it. Someone else on the panel is about to admit that they actually have, they've been employed by AIPAC before. Let's take a look at that.
After October 7th and after the rhetoric that many Jewish groups were alarmed by, you did see increased spending by political action committees over the issue of Israel. That is just a demonstrable fact of spending. How do you talk about that spending without doing what Galindo or Massey or some of these other folks are talking about?
I think it's really important to ground this conversation when you're comparing a US congressman to a sex therapist who's not a real candidate. She's a crazy person.
There, who is by profession a sex therapist.
As a Democrat consultant, she's a crazy person. I'm running ads right now against her for Sheriff Johnny Garcia, a real hero in San Antonio, because that woman is crazy. And when we're talking about her compared to a US congressman, I just don't think it's apples to apples. But I give you credit, I give everybody credit that there's a lot of money is pro-Israel, anti-Israel in all of these primaries, more so than I've ever seen before, no matter which side of this thing you're on.
She's not the only person in our party who's flirting with anti-Semitism.
Audie, to answer your question honestly, because you're not gonna get an honest answer from anyone on that panel, and you know this. She asks, okay, well, how do you talk about the Israel lobby and its influence on our elections without being accused of being an anti-Semite? And the answer is it's impossible because they don't want you to talk about that. It's impossible. You could be the most meek, mealy-mouthed commentator on the planet that's just trying to, cite what kind of spending took place in a particular congressional race. If you mention the Israel lobby, they're gonna call you an anti-Semite, no matter what. You could literally be a Jewish individual wearing a giant Star of David, but if you are critical of the Israel lobby and its undue influence over our politicians, you will be called an anti-Semite. And you know that, Audie, you know that. And these Democrats, man, you guys are super embarrassing, just running around calling anyone who hurts Israel's feelings an anti-Semite. Oh. The first guy who spoke, by the way, in that last clip is a CNN senior reporter by the name of Edward Isaac DeVere. You might be familiar with him. He used to write, I believe, over at The Atlantic. And he's the guy who worked with AIPAC, and the guy who's worked with AIPAC before is actually a Republican strategist by the name of Brad Todd. But you won't just hear those kinds of statements on cable television. You'll definitely hear them all over the place. You'll hear them from one of the biggest names in the Democratic Party, in fact. Here's Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and what he had to say when he was asked about AIPAC support and whether or not it's an anchor around the necks of Democratic primary candidates. Take a look.
It's never been an issue in any of my races at the state level, but I do think it has cynically been used by some. I'm gonna make this a broad statement, not about the race here in Philly, but I think it's been used cynically by some to try and silence certain voices, to try and say that certain people participating in politics shouldn't count or should be viewed in a toxic way. Now, do I agree with every political decision they've made, every endorsement they made? Of course not.
Have they hurt themselves, do you think, AIPAC? There's a blurring between being against AIPAC and being against Jewish folks giving money, you're saying?
I think it does get blurred because now what you are seeing is not, quote unquote, AIPAC money or however it was termed, but you're getting the Jews who give to that candidate who also support AIPAC. I think it's very dangerous in our system. If you are trying to silence certain voices based on their race, based on their faith, based on their particular ideology.
I don't care. I don't care that they're Jews. I don't care. Sorry, you're not special because you're Jewish. I don't care if you're Jewish, I don't care if you're Christian. If you are lobbying our government to carry out what's in the best interests of a foreign government to the detriment of the American people, you are a problem. The lobby is a problem. Now, we don't live in a system where all money is out of politics. Unfortunately, we live in a system where our Supreme Court has decided that unlimited money pumped into races, pumped into a candidate's candidacy is the equivalent of speech. We live in that system now. Now, I would love to have a constitutional amendment that does away with all money in politics. I wish our elections were publicly funded. And I'm willing to fight for that. So this isn't just, AIPAC bad and only AIPAC bad. We've been railing against money in politics on this show for many, many years. But like I explained earlier, when it comes to lobbying on behalf of a foreign country, and when that lobbying has such an impact that our foreign policy benefits that foreign country to the detriment of our country, it is a problem. And Josh Shapiro knows that, he knows that. No one's having a discussion here about like, oh no, we need to pass laws and regulations preventing Jewish people from campaign donations. No one's having a conversation about that. We are having a conversation about the undue influence of Israel on our politics, on our government. And Josh Shapiro has decided to label anyone who has a problem with that an anti-Semite. Noted, definitely noted, okay. So meanwhile, AIPAC itself is continuing to infiltrate, and I mean that word, infiltrate our political landscape by any trickery necessary. Now they know that they're unpopular with the American people. Americans have caught on to the fact that they're incredibly influential, and influential in ways that don't really benefit us. And so Luke Goldstein, a reporter over at The Lever, wrote yesterday that new AIPAC-aligned spending vehicle in disguise just dropped. Better Blue Fund is a new JFC bankrolled by Democratic Majority for Israel / AIPAC donors supporting Democratic candidates, many of whom are in competitive primaries where direct AIPAC support has become radioactive. Blue Fund acts as a workaround. That includes Ben McAdams in Utah's first. Previously, McAdams was DMFI endorsed, but not this cycle. Hence, his inclusion in the JFC makes it all the more significant. So in other words, AIPAC is trying to find workarounds. They're like relabeling things in order to pump money into campaigns without Democratic voters noticing. But luckily, we do have some reporters who are following this stuff, reporting on this stuff, and informing us about what's going on here. But make no mistake about it, the Democratic voters who believe that the Israel lobby is radioactive, or a candidate taking money from the Israel lobby is radioactive, are red-blooded Americans who want to vote for candidates who are going to look out for them. Not for Israel, but for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you an anti-Semite. We live in this country. We pay taxes in this country. We vote and elect representatives to represent us in this country. I could give a damn about what happens to Israel. Israel is not my country, wasn't born there, couldn't care less about Israel. So yeah, it is a big problem when a lobby that cares more about a foreign country influences our government to the detriment of the American people. I'm gonna keep repeating that over and over again. And no, invoking the Holocaust and anti-Semitism and whatever BS trickery they engage in order to justify this corruption, not gonna work. It's not gonna work. That simple.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.